if you're not getting monitored or selected this school year, but moving forward, you have some resources to prepare yourself for that time. So these are some of the resources we'll go over. If you go to our website, isbe.net/multilingual, click on the accountability box, and you'll see all these resources there. So the first one is our manual. This goes into great detail what Asma just explained, and more detail what we'll go over in a little bit too. The key resource that you should be using is the self-assessment report or self-assessment checklist, however you want to reference it. So this is a quick glance at it. At the top, there's some key details to pay attention to, and as well as some notes to help you use the self-assessment report. Here's an example of the programming section. Now keep in mind, whenever you see the red P, those are for components that are for preschool only. Now, you'll see some components that have subcomponents. So for example, this is the BPAC. There's 8.1 A through F. Keep in mind, if a district gets a finding for any subcomponent, the whole 8.1 section is not fully implemented. And we also utilize monitoring template. It's an Excel spreadsheet. We pull data, or we ask for the districts to pull data for us. Please use this format that we have here. It's easier for us to look at and easier for you to put the data to.
So I'll be looking at the steps in the monitoring process, and there's about 6 steps to our monitoring process, and I'll go into detail on how we go through each and every one. So this is a nice breakdown of what it overall looks like. At first, ISBE will notify your district. That will come through an email to the superintendent, EL director, or EL coordinator. You will get a notification through email stating that we will be monitoring you on a specific date. You have 40 days from that email to compile all of your evidence. After that, you will submit your evidence. Then ISBE will review. That will take approximately 40 days as well. And then after that, we will send back the report to the superintendent and EL coordinator. You will then have 40 days for a corrective action plan, and then after 40 days, you will submit your corrective action plan, and then we will respond to your corrective action plan. We have 40 days. And then after that, it's just follow up based off of what we saw, and that would take 1 full school year later for us to revisit or have another conversation. So it's 40 days between each of these. That's what the timeline is. So step 1 is a virtual meeting that we will set up between the monitors and the school district, and that will come after the email. You'll confirm that you received the email, and then we'll tell you that we'd like to schedule a meeting virtually to go over the process. We explain the tools, how to upload the documents, and what we look for. Step 2 is the compiling of the evidence, and that's where you will turn it in before or on the due date. You will also communicate anything with the ISBE monitors if you have questions or concerns or need clarification. All required evidence needs to be submitted in the correct format. Anything that is not in the correct format will not be accepted. Things that are submitted after the due date are also not accepted. And then a review checklist that Edwin had talked about is also provided, and it's on the website, and there's a manual. We will also provide you a questionnaire with links, and this questionnaire is not to be used basically for the purpose of the monitoring. It's to help give you feedback on your district, what parents, what teachers are saying. It's not evaluative, so it's not going to be where this is what everybody's saying and you're docked based off of it, or you're not compliant based off of what teachers, family, community members are saying, but it's just to help you understand how the program is going from another lens. There will be 2 different parts, one for the parents, one for the staff. And they are anonymous, so you could reassure your staff and your parents that they are, and we do send them out in a variety of languages for the families. So evidence review. This is when ISBE will review your evidence. We do have 40 days. Evidence needs to be submitted in the correct format. If not, it will be rejected. The time frame depends on the size of the LEA and the scope of the program, but it is 40 days from the date that you submit your materials that we will review it. Any items that are submitted after the deadline are not accepted. Then, so with our monitoring process, we do have a desktop and an on-site, but most districts, or actually all districts, do start off with a desktop, but there are some districts that we do visit on-site. During that on-site visit, I will talk about it a little bit later, but we will visit selected schools. We will also do some classroom visits, do in-person interviews with staff, administrators, and parents. And then we possibly will do some spot check on some files that we might request on the spot. And then after that, we will send out a summary report of our findings. Step 4 and 5, this is where the LEA will submit a corrective action plan, and they will outline how they plan on correcting the items that we found non-compliant. For step 5, ISBE will respond to that corrective action plan. Some components will either be fully accepted, that we accept a corrective action plan, and some might not be, and then we will work through that. And then our final step is the follow-up, which will take 1 full school year from the date of the report, which is the corrective action plan. And follow-up will be conducted to confirm full compliance. So we'll go through the corrective action plan and any other items.
So last school year was the first school year that we had actual full monitoring cycle. Prior to last school year, ISBE went about 5 years without doing any monitoring, so long overdue. And we'll look at some trends and data that we saw from last school year. So 23 school districts were monitored this past school year, 21-22. 6 of them were on-site and 17 were desktop. 16 school districts require TB and TPI, and 7 require TPI only. From those, they were 9 unit school districts, 8 high school districts, and 6 elementary school districts. Now, out of the top 10 districts with the highest number of findings, 8 were monitored using the desktop method only. And out of the top 10 districts with the least number of findings, 4 were monitored using the on-site method. The remaining 6 were monitored using the desktop method. So this led us to know that our desktop method is effective. Even if we're not going on-site, we're still able to evaluate a district's program. Now, the numbers that you see there, they're the components that are in the self-assessment report. These are the top 10 components we saw. 1.3 is in regards to the HLS being available in the student's home language. And most of those components have to deal with that. So what we're seeing is, what we saw last year is districts were mainly providing information, required documentation in the higher incidence languages, so like Spanish, Arabic, Polish, but those lower incidence languages were being neglected. And if we see that, you will get a finding.
So final thoughts on monitoring. You probably noticed I did not mention anything about Title III. We do monitor every school district, whether they have Title III, receive Title III, or do not. We do look at that. It doesn't, mention Title III, but if you are a Title III district, we will look at materials and resources that are purchased through Title III. So we will look at that stuff. There's an actual component, but we do monitor districts regardless of Title III. And then compliance monitoring reports and findings are matters of public record. In previous years, the list of districts that would be monitored would be listed, they would be shared. We do not do that. We will not be doing that this year. But anything in findings, they are public records. So some of you might think that this is, going to take a toll on the district. It's a lot of work. We get that, we understand that, but let's look at the bright side of things. There are benefits to this monitoring. It's to evaluate your program. It's to look, what are you guys doing that is great? What needs a little more support? It identifies areas of growth, adds strengths for your advocacy, and then they are used to evaluate, what is being done that's correct, incorrect, and how can we improve things. Because at the end of the day, our goal is to educate all the students to ensure that our ELs are receiving the supports and the services that they need.
And that's our final presentation. Now the floor is open to any questions, any comments, any concerns. All
And
right.
I'll walk, you want to walk around?
You can walk on.
Okay. I'm going to get my steps in. I'll start here and then.
For the Title III component, would you be looking for just the previous year Title III grant, the current year Title III grant, a couple of years previous? Just what fiscal years are you looking for in that?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're looking at the previous school year grant. So obviously, we'll also talk to your Title III consultant, though. If they say historically this district has had trouble with their Title III, or there's something that we don't see correct historically speaking, then that's when we may go beyond the previous fiscal year. But for the most part, we'll be looking at last school year. Yep, no problem.
So is this compliance within start in one school year and end in another? Like, could I expect a letter in May or way before then and finish within the same school year?
Yeah, that's a great question. We start September 1st, so 8 school districts have received notification so far. The last one is scheduled to go out in March. So that's our time frame. We won't go through the summer. We won't visit during the summer.
All right. So you're saying that if we have not received notification, then we won't be monitored this year?
No, you still will. So it starts from September, and then every month progressively we're sending notification letters up to March. March is when the last notification letter goes out. So for example, there's some that'll schedule go out November, some that'll go out in October, and none in December. We are not sending notification letters out due to the holidays in December. But then February and March will continue.
Does that answer your question? Okay. So there's more to come.
Yeah, I know before historically the department used to post the listings of which school districts we monitored online, but unfortunately we were told not to do that. Same thing with the reports, we're no longer posting them online, but that's why we said they are a matter of public record. So if someone from the public FOIAs us for a monitoring report, we're obligated to turn that into a FOIA request.
I think you just answered my question, but there's got to be a list, right, of which school districts are going to be monitored. You're just not releasing it until that month?
Well, we're not publishing a listing, so you'll get notified. So if your district is notified, you'll get notified when your superintendent does. So basically, you'll get an email notification letter.
Yeah, but it makes no sense for districts to not start preparing for that process if you have the list. Why would you not let them know in advance, hey, just so you know, you're due this year. So there's a lot of data, a lot of information that needs to be collected. I've been through this for 15 years.
Yeah.
So why is it that is not being provided to the directors? Number one. Number two, if that is the case, and you notify me, say, in December, then how long a period of time from that notification until the time that you actually come out?
So if you get a notification letter in December, you get 40 days to turn in the evidence. If we go on site, then we have 40 days to review your evidence and go on site. Once you get the report, if there's any findings, then you get 40 days to do a corrective action plan. Then we review your corrective action plan within 40 days. We approve or not fully accept it. And to your first question on the reasoning why, that's something that's out of our control. You could send me an email and I can move it up, your concerns, but we've shared the same sentiments, but unfortunately that's something that's out of the monitoring team's control.
Does that answer?
Not really, but okay.
Oh,
Could you go back to that slide and maybe speak to some of the other things that are more commonly found in the monitoring process, like you said, the home language survey not being in some of the other languages? Can you speak to some of those?
you're talking about this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So I can't remember off the top of my head each component, what it refers to, but 1.3 is on the HLS. 10.3, I believe, is on effective communication. 8.2 is BPAC. 9.1. Is it license?
Let me, just so we're not misspeaking in regards to this, I'm going to pull up our components, but this is part of the LEA self-assessment. Go ahead.
Yeah, but the ones that deal with programming, from specifically to programming, is 4.5 and 4.2. So as you can see, programming isn't something that we really saw a large issue with. It was mainly dealing with communication in all the native languages in the district. So that's what we saw. We saw districts appropriately representing the higher incident languages, so Spanish, Polish, Arabic, but those other lower incident languages were being neglected. And that's something that from the federal department we've received feedback on looking into and more deeply, yes.
Say we only have one student. What's our one student that from Africa? What's the? I don't know, but we have one student. Let's say they speak Urdu, but we don't have a home language survey for one parent.
To answer that question for the home language survey, on our ISBE website, we do have the home language survey translated in quite a few languages. So
But we also do registration online. And so I know that there has to be an electronic signature, and so I had to fight to make sure that we had that electronic signature put on the home language survey so that it's validated. But what happens with that new student that comes in with that language?
well, you should have a home language survey on hand, per se, that you could give to that parent for that one language if, you don't have it on your website.
Okay.
So we still need to ensure at the end of the day that all of our students are receiving the services, our parents are receiving the correct communication. So whether it's one language, two languages, we need to ensure that our parents understand what we're asking and our students are getting the services that they need. So, I know it's tough and I know there's a lot of movement within schools. Students transfer in, students transfer out. At one point, you might have 20 plus students that speak the specific language, and then the following school year, that language is no longer there. But we still need to ensure that all of our students are getting what they need and our parents are able to receive communication in their native language if it's needed. Does that? I'll make my way.
So I just have a follow-up to what that lovely lady in the front just asked. So most of the districts now, I think, are moving to an online registration process since COVID, right? When we went all virtual for everything, we moved that direction and we've kind of kept that practice up. But so we, again, same thing, we've worked with our tech department to get the signatures, but the parents are filling all that out on their own. And so I'm just looking for suggestions on how do we ensure, if they're not actually coming into the building necessarily, like how do we ensure that they get the native language if it's an all online process? If
Right.
you have any suggestions, we'd appreciate that.
Yeah, so what we look for is if there's a translation option available on your online registration, and also if there's instructions, like an instruction manual that you're giving the parents on how to fill things out electronically, that it explains it in those native languages too. So for example, if you tell a parent, you give them instructions on English, but they don't speak English, how do they know how to navigate that translate option, So we're looking for that information that's there, and that may help answer your question a little bit. And then,
So first, just to give an idea, we started using DocuSign, and within DocuSign, you can change the language. And so I'm not the tech person, so I can't say how they did it, but that's how we've helped kind of work through that, is that through DocuSign, the languages can be changed, but then also all of our registration has the ability to change into pretty much every language off of our website. So that's just one thing that we've tried. And then anybody that, is indicating yes, and it's a different language other than our top three, then our EL teachers reach out and provide, translations and stuff. So that's just one thing that we did. But the home language survey form, so this is really probably sounds like a silly question, but it's been a nonstop debate in my district for years. It goes in the student's CUME folder, correct? So what we have is we have an EL folder, the green folder, that goes in the student's CUME folder. So the debate has been, does it have to go in the EL folder and the CUME folder, even though the EL folder is in the CUME folder? Does that make sense? So what people are saying, like, does it have to, do we have to have it twice in one folder?
No, you don't have to have it twice. And if it's within the same folder, I mean, when we're looking at the actual HLS and when we're requesting these files, it's as long as it's there. So if it's a folder within a folder, I mean, technically it's there. As long as it's within the student's file, it doesn't matter what order. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
if,
welcome.
if that works for your district, then that's fine. Yeah.
Is there a district finding if the home language survey is given to a parent in English, although the parent speaks a different home language, but they understand the English written language?
So it needs to be documented that the parent requested it in English. So that's what we'll be looking for. So if we're looking, for example, on your data that you report to SIS, for example, we see Filipino Tagalog, and then we see that HLS. If there's documentation showing the parent requested all communication to be in English, then that's when you wouldn't get a finding. But you need to have that documentation that the parent requested to waive that HLS not being in their native language.
Thank you. So we've been discussing the home language surveys being provided in the native languages. And earlier you mentioned other documentation. So regarding entry letters, continuing letters, exit letters, all need to be in the native language? Is that correct?
Correct, unless the parents waive this.
And what exactly is the form? Is there a form that identifies what it looks like to be waived?
There is no form. We just ask that it's in writing and signed and dated by the parent.
Okay. And then I do understand too, of course, the report card waivers we have in all the languages. It's just been our experience, similar to the question that was just asked, that parents, so many of our parents prefer English and would not want it in the native language, but we still have to provide documentation that they've been asked if they wanted it in their native language.
Can you repeat that one? So you're asking?
It's similar to, I think, the gal over there to the right mentioned that some parents prefer the English. They would prefer not to have it in their native language. Again, not all parents, but
Right.
there are some. So
you'll need to have that documented to show.
for the entry letters and the others as well.
Yeah.
And I think, are the entry letters and the continuing letters and the exit letters, are those all on in the different languages? That's what we thought as well. We've seen those. But again, we've gone that route. Parents don't like them. So that's why we went with the English.
Yeah, just make sure you have it documented that the parent is waiving from it being in their native language.
So if they exempt, the report card being in another language, if they give us the waiver for that, does that not automatically kind of transfer to all the other letters as well? For example, if you have a parent who speaks Spanish and you say that you don't really, they sign the waiver saying they don't really want that report card in Spanish, does that then exempt them for all the other documentation also being in Spanish?
If you have a waiver where the parent says yes, I'm waiving from all communication from the district being in my native language, then yes, that does waive it.
Perfect. That's perfect. Because why should there be any other documentation then if it's
Yeah.
already been done once?
I'm sorry. So your question earlier was if for every single document there needs to be a waiver?
Right.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I wasn't understanding that. Then no.
Just if the report card waiver is in place and they've
Well,
indicated English only.
Well, if it just says report card only in the waiver, then no. But it needs to clearly communicate all communication from the district. Because if you say report card only, if it's a report card only waiver, then that's only, we'll look at it and we'll say they're only waiving the report card. Okay. But if it's all communication from the district.
So then I have one more question. So we have the report cards, the waivers on English on one side, and the back side of the paper is in the native language. So now, we hired a translation company. They translated all of these English report card waivers into all these different languages like Spanish and Polish and all of that. So now it's going to be a huge undertaking for us to kind of have, all of that translated just to kind of add all communication. So can we just kind of write on the English side, report card waiver and all communication, and then have the parents sign that? Because, just trying to get it all in, it's just going to be hard, because then we need to have that flip side translated as well, right?
You speak up a little bit louder. I'm sorry, I can't really hear you.
Okay, so my question was, we already have report card waivers that we offer to our parents that need to be signed off. Like we have one side in English and the other side in Spanish, and it says that I'm waiving, my right to receive the report card in Spanish, right? So we've already got all of that in place. Now, for us to, have the waiver for all communication, then we're going to have to tweak that document and then get it translated again. So instead of doing that, can we just have in English saying report card and all communication being waived in the native language, and then just leave it at that and have parents sign? Or do we now
You would still have to translate that waiver though, if it's in there. So for example, the report card waiver, if that's what you're talking about, if it's just in English what they're waiving, then the parents don't understand what they're actually waiving to. But if you have it in Spanish that yes, I would like all communication to be in in English, then that's fine, and all communication from district to be in English, then that's fine. But if it's a parent that speaks Spanish and you have a waiver in English, the parent won't know what they're waiving to. They'll just sign and date.
No.
So
We do have it in English. So it's on one side of the sheet is English, the back side is Spanish. So it's, the waiver is being offered in both languages, the English as well as the native language. My question is, do we need to now get another document translated? Because right now the waiver is just for the report card.
Yeah. You do, because again, if it's just a report card that doesn't, it isn't waiving, for example, the entry letter, the continuation letter. What you're only waiving is a report card.
Right, we understand that. We're hoping that it could be maybe lumped into it, because we know that through all the information we've learned over the years that a report card waiver is needed, but we have never seen that a waiver is needed for those other letters of communication that go home.
If the parent, if we don't see those letters are being translated into their native languages, if there's no waiver from the parents saying that they want their communication to be in English, then that's going to be a finding. So how are you documenting that the parent doesn't want those letters? The report card waiver, that's different, but if it isn't explicit to say all the other communications from the district, then that's how you get a finding.
So is that somewhere, is this still working? Oh, is that somewhere listed?
Like
Is that online somewhere, what you just said?
the self-assessment, on the self-assessment
Right.
report, it says for each documentation that we look for in the native language, it highlights it's available in all languages, if applicable. So unless a parent waives, then that's involved. No, we don't have a waiver. There's no waiver. The parents need to sign and date.
Well, it's interesting because that's a cost. Because when we did have all these waivers, that we had to send those out, and that was a cost to the district. So it's interesting that all the entry letters and, the service and so on are all online, but would that be something that
Well,
ISBE
the responsibility of translating isn't on ISBE. The responsibility of translating into the parent's native language is on the responsibility of the district. That isn't the responsibility of the agency. We do have other languages available, but that's not our duty. The
But
duty
you
ultimately
have so
falls on
many-
every district.
But you already have so many on already present.
For
doing it-
HLS, for notification letters, yes, but ultimately that responsibility falls on the district for translation.
I'm just going to move around to answer more.
Just a quick follow-up to that. As part of our registration process online, we have a question that asks parents their preferred language of communication. So as long as that can be translated on their end, does that cover?
Yeah. So as long as that's translated into a native language that the parent can understand, that'll
And if
be
they
fine.
put English
And if
on
it's
there
English,
and
then
it's had the capability of being translated, then we're covered.
yeah. But if it could be like in Spanish, then that's fine.
But if that question is only being asked in English, then we would have a finding.
Yep, correct.
Okay, and then really quickly, just because I've had parents ask me this, as far as the documents that are provided from ISBE that are translated, can I just, and I'm not criticizing it in any way,
Yeah.
just so I can speak to it when I get asked the question, are those translated, I guess, by a person, or like how are those translated?
So, Asma, do you want to talk to?
Yeah, so our documents are translated through our company. So that's what we're told. We don't do any of the translations within the team or the department. So
Yeah, we have a contract there.
yeah, and I don't know who it actually is contracted out to, but they are sent to somebody within the agency and they're sent out.
Hi, first of all, thank you very much. I know this is a difficult position to be in and a lot of questions.
Thank you. No, it's all right.
So we really, we do appreciate you. We don't hate you.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. You
I
know,
thi-
that's a scary word up there, monitoring. So I get it. I get, everyone's.
And I appreciate the help too, being new. I think this might have been covered, but I just want to be crystal clear. Were you saying that there has to be a paper home language survey in every EL file? Because when we moved to online registration in my son's district, they do the home language survey as part of that online process. But then I think what that means is that the paper went away. Like I speak 2 other languages, but that was all listed on my son's, in my son's electronic registration. So in his folder, he won't have a paper HLS from me. Would that be a finding?
So we just ask for a copy of the HLS. If it's an electronic copy that you, for example, save and print to us, then that's fine. But currently our regulations don't reflect electronic stuff. So that's something that we need to update on our end.
Maybe we can talk about that, because it wasn't actually a form. It was that the 2 questions were, like the required questions were asked, and then I filled in what languages I speak and what languages my son speaks, and then I signed the registration. But so there was never actually in his file, I'm quite sure they can do a printout of everybody in the school that answered yes to either question and what language, but it's not actually a form.
Yeah, there needs to be a signature and a date below those 2 questions, even if it's electronic. So that's what we'll be looking for. So if there's no signature or date below those 2 questions that are required on the HLS, then that's
Even though I signed and dated the registration itself and it was part of that?
Yeah, that's right, because that's only for the whole registration packet. The HLS requires for there to be an actual signature and date on the actual HLS itself.
So if you worked with the technology department to have 2 signature sections, one under where you're asking the HLS question, and then at the end of the registration, that would satisfy the requirement, even though when you came in and monitored and looked in a file, you wouldn't see any HLS?
Well, if it's electronic, then
The district, I mean, we've seen this. There's a lot of districts that do the electronic format. They do provide a screenshot of it, and it works. So if they're providing a screenshot, then we're okay with that, as long as we're actually seeing it. Because we do know that districts are moving to more electronic everything. So a screenshot would work. Thank you. No problem.
Just a little clarification, because it's not just the 2 questions. There's a blurb at the top that states the law, and that should also be included in the information that is provided, so that parents understand why it is that they're signing that and that it is a federal law.
Yep.
Right?
Thank you.
I get it, the whole translating documents and stuff. But when I'm thinking about it from a legal standpoint, and if a parent says, I'm not waiving the translation of all communications, then all communication that includes Twitter, includes whatever we post on Instagram, that's all communication. So if we're posting something if I post something on Instagram and I'll do it in English and Spanish. Great parent PD, don't forget if you can make it, make sure you come, but I didn't post it in another language like Urdu because I don't speak that, then is that now I'm not in compliant because that's all communications. Most of us are already posting things online, and I'm not, and I read it, but I don't remember if that's not reflecting the changes that are happening online and with social media and all the things that we are using. And I think that's where the confusion comes in because we're all going online. This is what's happening, but then the document is not necessarily reflecting the changes that are occurring at a fast pace, or the law.
So I get it and I understand that, but this is how I'm looking at it. If I'm a parent that only speaks one specific language and you're sending communication home, you're obviously, if I need to find out about that communication, it's not happening via social media. It's happening through an email blast or a phone call or a flyer that's being sent home or an actual.
Facebook is not included in that. You communicate a lot through that. So right now, social media is not something you're looking at.
No.
No, we're not. We're not.
It's
looking at
just
social media.
communication that's coming from the school being sent to parents, like parent-teacher conferences happening. I mean, I'm sure it's not just through social media that the school is just communicating with parents, right? Okay.
But we are looking at engagement with parents and community. So if you use your engagement via social media platforms as a form of evidence, then you may get a finding. It depends. Each situation is different per each district, and you know what we look at the evidence. But if that's your means of engagement, okay.
All communications, and that's included within the communication. So that's not the communication you're looking for.
No, we're not looking at social media.
Anything that comes like emails, robocalls, and flyers.
Yeah, and then if you look at the self-assessment report, it lays out what exactly we're looking.
But if you're submitting evidence to us for compliance on communication with parents and your only sort of evidence is Facebook, and let's just say it's English only or Spanish only, then that would technically, then it would be a finding.
Yeah.
But if you're, I mean, at the end of the day, you're selecting the evidence, so you have a variety of evidence to submit at the end, so.
Could you speak a little bit about what you look for the EL progress monitoring part?
So the ELPTP? To be honest, that's something that you'll need to talk to Ray Clements about in accountability. Our department.
So what is it about EL progress reports? It is what we look for in that. It is, we understand that some schools do send out progress reports, some schools do not. So it really depends on what, and in the self-assessment, it explains what we look for. And then it, you know, it really depends on the school because some choose to send it, some include it as part of the English progress report, some include certain lines. I mean, there isn't a specific format that we look for. We do. Yeah.
It'll be under the report card. The report card.
Report card section.
Section in there. Yeah.
So because most of us do have online registration, new parents technically do have to come in and present residency. So do you recommend that home language survey be part of that in person with a paper copy instead of doing it electronically?
To be honest, yes. And the reason is that way you can effectively communicate with the parent, let them know what the HLS is for, and if they do flag with answering yes on the questions, you know, they may qualify for your services, because that way you don't have a parent who's upset because their child is misidentified. I'm sure some of you all have had that situation. The parent's like, hey, my child is not an EL, why'd you screen them? Why are they the services? That you can clarify that before you're in that mess.
Hold on. No, so everybody else could hear your question.
So is the 40 days calendar or school days?
It's 40 calendar days.
We don't work on the weekends.
We don't either.
We don't either.
We don't either. Yeah.
So we will not be visiting your school on a weekend, and we don't work on holidays either, and we take that into effect when we actually plan. So some districts will realize that when we do send out a notification letter that we're giving a little bit over 40 days.
Yeah.
And that's to account for like any state holidays, any school holidays. We do try to take that into consideration, and we don't work on the weekends, just like Edwin said, so.
Yeah, and on the, more on the 40 days, I know that sounds like a short amount of time, but based on the 23 school districts that we monitored, we sent out a feedback survey. Almost majority said 40 days was enough. Majority said 40 days was enough. So, you know, because we were thinking about maybe reducing it, but district said 40 days is more than enough. So,
Quick question. So I just want to make sure I have the right language for families who are either waiving their right to have correspondence in their native language. Could the statement just be my preferred language of correspondence is, and if they put English, then that's waiving it? Or should it be like I waive my right for school correspondence in my home language? Or would either do? I guess I'm just looking for a statement that would like pass. And then I have one other.
We're not looking for specific statements that would pass. We're just trying to ensure that parents are receiving the communication in the language that they're choosing. So it's to protect the parents' rights, the students' rights. That's what we're looking for. So
What language would then, of maybe the statement, what would exude that? I mean,
well, one, whatever verbiage you communicate with your district leadership that you think is good, and also that is translated into to that parent's native language to begin with, so they know what they're waiving.
so there isn't one statement that
Yeah.
works better than
Because
another.
for each language it may be different.
Right.
Okay, and my second question is, sorry, and then my second question is, in terms of the school correspondence, should all websites then be translatable in all languages?
Technically, yes.
And we've
looking for
seen that.
Yeah.
Just like last year, monitoring districts, we saw this. Districts have that option. I'm not a tech person or don't know how to work a website. I do know that it's now available where like there's one district that I could speak for where I saw this. There's a drop down and it translates everything on that website in quite a few languages that are within the district. So that is available. I just would not know how to guide you to that. Yeah.
I've seen some districts use Google. I think Google has Google Translate has some sort of plugin for that. Yeah.
We still have time if there's any other questions.
We'll go ahead and share these PowerPoint slides with the folks at IRC,
yeah.
so they can put them in the platform for us, so you all have access to. But again, isbe.net/multilingual. Click on accountability. You'll see all these resources as well as other presentations that we have too.
So the question that was asked was those components that are at the bottom of that trends and data. Will you have AP? That's part of the self-assessment, which is posted. So 1.3 is a reflection of what's in the self-assessment. So if you take the self-assessment and just look at those numbers, it explains what each of those components are.
And we asked for what specific evidence we're looking for too. So
Yeah.
you could, prepare yourself for in the near future if you ever get monitored, you know exactly what we're looking for.
I would just add that I would, as having been in a school before, I would use that self-assessment as a reflection piece for myself and to evaluate my programming. I highly recommend, whether you are being monitored or not monitored this school year or in the next couple of school years, that you use it to kind of assess yourself, assess your programming, because it is a helpful tool to see what you need to work on, what's working, what's not working, what you have and what you don't have. So that tool's available. It is on our website.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would just use it as a method of evaluation for myself. One, because this is being recorded, so that's, so everybody else could hear.
Sorry, everyone. In the last section or session when we were talking with about access, they were talking about there's a 30-day
time period where we can test students, right? Like new students to the school to screen them, correct? For screening. And then 9.1 of the notice of program enrollment, I don't know if this is updated or not, or maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing. It says all parents need to notify parents no later than 30 days after the beginning of a school year or 14 days after the enrollment of any child in a program.
So that is correct, and the reason for that is because we do have some students that will enroll in a school mid-year or after that. So the 30-day window is from, like, let's just say August or whenever they're enrolling, but that 14-day applies for when we're talking January or March.
In the ISBE site, because I was looking it up,
Uh-huh.
about that, it does say 30 days. It doesn't say 14. I don't know.
So we could try, well, my colleague here will speak to that.
The enrollment it is referring to is the enrollment in program. So you have 30 days to screen that student, okay? And then when you put that student in a program, from that time you have 14 days to notify the parents. The enrollment in the program. Yeah, exactly, exactly. You got it. Good.
I guess I just need a little clarification on what you just said. So if you have a student that moves into your district in January, it was my understanding you had 14 days to screen them, not 30 days. 30 days, even if they move in mid-year. That's new. It's really, I just read it. Okay, great.
Wait.
Yeah, please be as timely as possible, and that's what's in the rules too, is they need to be identified in a timely manner. And waiting the full 30 days is, a little bit much. But yeah, so yes, it is 30 days to screen that student. Enrollment of the student in a program.
Does that answer your question? You're welcome.
In other words, Trevor was saying we encourage your school district to screen the student as soon as they enter your school district. But if you are so busy and you don't have time, whoever is your assessor did not have a time, and you wait until the 30th day that is required by the law that you have to screen, and you screen that student on that day, then from that day, you have a 14 day to enroll that student.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.